Good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. This is the Marion City Council work session for Tuesday, April 2nd. Okay, first on our agenda, we have a couple of presentations. Yeah. Oh. So first up is Marion Youth Coalition. You're welcome to come forward at this time. Please introduce yourself, name and address, and it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Mayor. My name is Madeline Jarvis. I'm a Cedar Rapids resident, but I'm a City of Marion employee.
My name is Morgan Boniface. I'm also a Cedar Rapids resident, but I work all throughout Lynn County.
Welcome.
I am a Marion resident, lifelong, and I currently own Sound Mind Therapy in Marion.
Jill Ackerman, Marion resident with the Marion Chamber of Commerce.
I'm Brian Davis, Marion resident, city employee, and with the Marion Police Department, obviously.
Michelle Wilson, Marion resident, social worker, Marion School.
So if you could speak into the microphones because the meetings are recorded and people listen to them at home, so thank you.
Michelle Wilson, Marion resident, social worker at Marion School.
Thank you.
Emma Ambrose, school counselor at Burnett Middle School.
I am John Tercy. I run the Boys and Girls Club, and I'm a Cedar Rapids resident.
Casey Chapman. I'm Cedar Rapids or Marion resident, and I'm principal at St. Joseph.
Good. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you so much. And believe it or not, this is only a smattering of the representatives from the Marion Youth Coalition here today. I'd like any representatives with the Marion Youth Coalition to just kind of wave or stand up.
Okay, just about everyone in this room.
Good representation.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, and I'd especially like to thank our superintendents, Chris Dyer and Nathan Ware, for joining us today for this meeting. So we started this initiative after seeing the community need from Imagine Next of resources for our youth in our community, as well as a location for these things to happen. Throughout all of our different lenses of work and the way we interact with Marion, we saw some questions, comments, concerns about after-school behavior in the uptown area. This came together in an initial partnership meeting with the Marion Public Library, Marion Independent School District, and the Marion Police Department, looking at what can we do to really help all of our citizens reach higher. From that initial brainstorming session, we kept bringing partners on board because this is such a positive thing for everybody to see that we all want to help our youth improve. And as this grew, we kind of divvied up into 4 subcommittees of looking at accountability and community initiatives, parent and community education, student programming and activities, and the Marion Youth Center. So what we want to do is just give you a quick snippet overview of what we've done this first year and what our next action steps are. So Jill and Officer Davis, if you want to share what's going on with the accountability and community initiatives.
Yeah, so starting off, my name is Brian Davis. Part of this initiative was to get together, find out how we were going to draw the community together and engaging students and supporting positive interactions, and also rewarding those positive interactions. And one of those ways was we come up with handing out posters to area businesses so students can recognize that is a business that supports PBIS, and PBIS is the Positive Behavioral Interventions and Support System. That's something that's already going on in the school system. It basically bridges that gap from school to the community. They know that they get rewards at school, a point system that enrolls them. They can also enrolls them into events and special raffles, and then also they're able to go to a PBIS store within the school. These cards are given, so there's cards that are given to the businesses, and store owners, employees can give these cards to a student if they see them doing something positive, whether that's helping their parents carry the groceries out to their car, whether it's behaving. It can be very, very simple, picking up a piece of garbage off the floor and putting it into the proper receptacle. It's that positive interaction and just supporting that student when they see something that they're doing that is respectful, whether it's whether they're being respectful, safe, and so on.
I think you have an example of what those posters look like in your packet, in your council packet, and then also an example of what the card is that we're passing out. When we met as a group, as Madeline mentioned, there's lots of different agencies and organizations that are helping with this cause. And I think one of the things that we determined very early on that it was really important to talk to the kids in the same language that they're already used to hearing at school, which is where PBS kind of fell into place. And I think the word intervention, positive behavior intervention and supports, that word intervention is really important because it is showing a positive interaction or intervention between an adult in the community and the student. And I just think that that's just kind of what Marion is all about. And so I think it's a really positive move. And we got really great feedback from the business community when we passed out the posters, and they were happy to have the cards. And so we're excited to get this program rolling. I think you're going to hear from, from the parent and community education, Amber Hoff and Morgan now.
So I'm Morgan Boniface. I work all throughout Linn County with Parent Education Consortium, and our community has really been focused on engaging the community as a whole, but more specifically the parents of the kids who are going to be actually using the youth center to start out with. So a couple of things that we're hoping to do is offer some networking events for the parents and for the families. So we want to make sure that we're encompassing the family as a whole, that we're really focusing in on these kids, but we know that kids go home and then they have all kinds of experiences outside of school that have to do with their family. So we really want to encompass the family as a whole and offer some networking opportunities for families just to get to know each other and to come together on common ground. So that's been one of our focuses. The other one is being able to provide resources for families, whether that be resources for trainings, offering special trainings, or just how they can get in contact with other needs in the community, getting them connected with whatever they need to get connected with. So we're looking at, like I said, doing some networking events with families, and then also some more individualized, like quarterly trainings, or just areas or times where families can come together to gather some resources so that we're really wrapping around the family as a whole. Anything else?
Oh, you pretty much got it.
Wonderful.
All right, and my name's Emma Ambrose. I'm a counselor at Burnett Middle School, just across the street. So I am on the subcommittee who is aimed at student programming and looking at the activities that we have in our community. And so we kind of set out, our goal initially was to maybe build out more activities, more programming for students. And then our goal kind of shifted because we recognized there's already a lot of positive opportunities for our students after school, because we saw that that was kind of the time that our community was kind of running into some issues with the youth, was after school when students didn't have that productive time. And so our goal has now shifted into creating a calendar that will highlight and collaborate with different agencies and organizations in our community. So it can be kind of like a one-stop, easy access highlight of all the things that are either free or low cost for our youth in our community. And so we are really excited because the City of Marion has agreed to host that calendar on the Retire website. So we are just wrapping up and finishing, kind of having that master list of who we want involved in this calendar and getting those events laid out so we can roll this calendar out. So we're very excited about the work. And I'll let John Tercey come on up.
Want to introduce yourself?
You go ahead, they know me.
Everybody does. So our part is, once you take a look at all that, is trying to provide kids a safe, fun, educational place to go when they're not in a safe place. So any out-of-school time, whether that is right after school, during the school year, or during the summer. And our first task was to try and find a place to go. And we found it. We're very fortunate. The Marion Independent School District and Chris Dyer are going to allow us to go into the old or former Marion Homeschool Assistance Program building. And the goal for us immediately will be to serve 30 to 50 kids 50 being the preference right now. At the middle school level, we know that seems to be a little bit of a hangout area down in this area of town right after school. So provide those kids with a safe place to be Monday through Friday from whenever school gets out to 6, 7 o'clock at night. And then we will also provide them with a full summer program from 8:30 to 5:30, somewhere in there. We'll figure that out as time goes on. It's probably going to happen in the fall of this year, but that was the immediate goal, is find a place. We understand that the homeschool building, or former homeschool building, is just a small start to where we want to go. So we started looking at other partners, and I'm going to let Holly talk about that.
Hello, everyone. For everybody else here, I'm Holly Trineri. I'm the library director. As John said, with the work that we've been doing from a library perspective, with Madeline's involvement and with Michelle, we have kind of come together and talked about what could the future of that Marion Youth Center look like past the temporary space that they're going to have. They're looking for new space, and the library's hopefully looking for new space. So we're kind of in the talks right now between our two boards to talk about what that future could look like with a partnership in that space being housed in the new library space wherever we go moving forward. The thought being we already have a strong relationship with those kids as well. We have a lot of them coming to the library in the afternoons. We have programmers in the library. We have technology and a lot of the things that the Marion Youth Center is looking for. So maybe if we could add a couple of pieces onto that, like a gym and a game room type of thing, that we would be able to bring these two projects together and house the Marion Youth Center within the library in the future. So again, we're just in those investigative stages. They have a way forward right now, but as we continue to look at our future and our future in the Uptown, we hope that might be a possibility.
So just in summary, I want to say that it's a whole lot of people, and it's really exciting to see so many people on board with this. I think whenever we say, let's help some kids, people are anxious to jump on board with that. The plan for the Youth Coalition is to continue as long as we feel there's work to be done, and I think we're still feeling that way. The fall start of the Marion Youth Center will be a significant step for our group. We're really excited about that. As this is how am I going to say this? As we continue to grow and we try to figure out what our funding is going to look like, especially for the youth center, but for the other committee work as well, we would like to ask if at some point we could come back to the council and have you hear us again, see if there's any potential funding opportunities that you can advise us about, or possibly even entertain a funding request to help us with our efforts. Although the focus of our work is to benefit youth, I know that you all can imagine the ripple effect and how it will really help everyone in this community if we're helping our kids. Thank you for your time, and thanks everybody for being here today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Are you willing to answer some questions
Yeah,
if anyone
we can
has
try.
any? Okay. Any questions? Or
I do, but
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. First of all, I love this. I've circled things on it. So just so I'm clear, this hasn't started yet. It will commence in the fall, and now it's the planning?
The Marion Coalition, the 4 subcommittees have been working for almost a year. In May it will be a year. But the Youth Center, that's one of the committees, that will open this fall.
But are you already doing things with students as a part of this organization? You're just pulling more pieces into it for the fall? I just want to make sure I
We
heard
are
correctly.
not doing anything directly with students yet.
Okay.
But except for PBIS.
Right,
yes.
okay. And I know that's been ongoing for a while at the schools.
Yep.
Okay, so I absolutely love it. I believe we have a lot of programming for seniors and, a lot of amenities in the community, and I feel like aside from the recent skate park, I've been curious what we could do to reach that age group and others, so I think this could be a great fit. Couple questions are what happens after 9th grade if students want to go in? Do you think there might be a future expansion, or why the cutoff there? Just curious.
Yep, so I might ask John to answer that, but what we did talk about is having kids who will be 5th and 6th to start, 5th and 6th grades, and then adding 7th and 8th, and then when kids get to be a 9th grader, if they've participated in the program, having them come back as mentors to the younger kids.
Great idea.
We think, John, help me out, I think that we believe we'll lose kids a little bit more once they get into high school.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Yeah, Michelle did a great job, yeah. We ultimately thought, and I'll be honest with you, middle school's a hard place to start, but it's a great place to start. I mean, I think with, and Emma could tell you, and the people around us, I think the first concern was, how do we get these middle school kids, and I want to be clear, it's not just Marion. The reason we have Mr. Weir's here in Linn-Mar is because we want to get a split there. So we want not quite half, maybe half the kids from Linn-Mar, half the kids from Marion, but ultimately we thought the middle school kids seem to be causing a little bit of a problem in this area. So how can we get those kids immediately off the streets? By starting with 5th and 6th graders, they're younger kids, more moldable. We'll grow with them. They'll become older. We have a program called Junior Staff Career Development within Boys and Girls Club. The whole idea will be to make those kids mentors, make them part-time staff, and they become the kids that knew how to get away with breaking the rules, and now they know how to stop them from breaking rules. So we just thought it was a good start place for us. Ultimately, yeah, I think if we make this grow, and it could grow into partnership with the library, obviously the goal will be expand the number of kids we are serving and the number of how far it would go up and down. So not only just middle schoolers, it might go lower and stuff. It's just a good start place.
So 5th and 6th, the fall, though, that's where you're going to start.
Yeah.
And then my question, because you asked about a future ask for money, how are you going to currently fund the fall, the training, the resources for families, parents, and then the summer programming? I have a big question mark by. Where's the money?
Well, right now we have a grant out to a major foundation that we've used in the past. So we just finished it today. She said it's good to go. She's going to submit it. So we have some grant funding to start us off. Ultimately, we have a great relationship with a lot of business partners in Marion already. I think the Marion community will be really happy to hear that we're trying to move a youth center into this area. So we're going to have to go out to the community and start raising funds. In all sincerity, it makes some people nervous. It's what I do every day. You know, we're a $1.4 million budget, and it's all based on us going out doing events and getting to know businesses and individuals. So ultimately, we're going to have to build that base because this is going to have to come from Marion. One of our theories is, at least within Boys and Girls Club, I shouldn't speak for everybody, but if the community wants a club, a center, they will support a club or center. So part of it is our membership is $12 a year. We scholarship 95% of the kids that come to us already at the club. So the goal is not to charge kids to come to the club, but it's to try and get the community to raise up and help us out. So we will do that. It's something we're used to doing, and it will bleed into the summer program as well because it'll be a much longer and more hours and more time.
So, yeah, I think the scaffolding approach from funding might work. And then one more quick thing, if I might. One thing that I saw in all the subcommittees, you know, community-wide and a lot of community, which is awesome, is there an opportunity to maybe build in a community service component for the students? I would love to see it in the schools as part of the required curriculum. I don't believe that it is. Maybe this is an opportunity to, again, with the partnership with the city and everyone else, come up with a way for students to, you know, grow and learn, have that sense of fulfillment, give back to the community, interact that way. So I'm just planting a seed. I'm not even asking for an answer right now, but if that isn't part of the programming, if it's something that you would consider if it's workable in it, because I think it would be a really great benefit. I would love to see all students everywhere at that age go out and give back, and there are a lot of great programs they could plug in to do that, particularly if the library does a lot of that stuff. So just planting the seed. I'm done. I love it. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Bryant.
My question is about the PBIS. Is that all grades? Or I shouldn't say all grades. I'm sure the older kids aren't doing them. The younger, like my 8-year-old at FMI?
Yep.
Okay.
So PBIS,
Could you please, could you speak into the microphone, please? Thanks. Sorry.
Yes, so the Linmar schools and the Marion schools all use the PBIS system.
Is that starting at kindergarten?
Yep. So it's started in elementary and carried through all levels.
Okay.
Yep, it's made appropriate differently. So it's implemented differently in the elementary than the middle and the high school, but it's a system-wide. Yep. Is that
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, I just want to thank you all. I think to see this large of a group of people, I know there are people who aren't here, involved and interested in this subject says a lot about who we are as a community, and it's very telling. So thank you all for your hard work and your interest. And I just want to note that both superintendents from the two schools are here, Shannon Biscard and Chris Dyer. That's also very telling that the schools are involved and interested in being part of this. Our brand as a city, part of that is that we're the best place to raise a family. So this puts some meat behind those words, and really puts some something substantial behind those words that we're actually as a community trying to do something like this. And I know that it comes up periodically. Why don't we have a youth center? And for years, I grew up here, and that's always been a request from the community. So that we're finally doing it, I think is really exciting. So great. Thank you very much. Okay. We will proceed with the rest of the agenda. Under the consent agenda, the first item is at the bottom of page 3. If there's anything before that anyone would like to discuss individually, separately,
Yes.
feel free to bring that up. Yep, go ahead.
Items 3, 4, and 5.
On page 2?
Yeah, on
Okay.
page 2. Let's see, hang on, I pulled that. I just had a question because all 3 of these are first violations, and the penalty is different. And I was just wondering why. The penalty, the dollar amount assessed. I mean, 1 is alcohol and 2 are tobacco, but I mean, the 2 tobacco, unless I'm missing something.
That would be to the city attorney, I guess, that question.
I would have to take a look at those. I have not. Oh, hold on. I didn't draft those orders, so I would need to take a look at those.
Okay, and yeah, I was just wondering if that's under our purview. If we set that, I would just wonder why it's not consistent.
I believe the violations are set by state code. 1 is a liquor license violation, the other 2 are tobacco. And there might be error. I think the 1 was a second violation, which is why it's higher.
Okay, yeah, because it was exponentially different. Okay.
Makes sense.
Then, yeah, that's it for that. Thank you.
Okay, if there aren't any others, we then are on number 5, C5 at the bottom of page 3. This is under engineering. Mr. Barcolo?
Yep. So during our discussions of several subdivision plats that have come in, several council members brought up the fact that maybe we need to talk to the DOT about lowering the speed limit on 13. The last time we requested the change was back in 2015, and it took 2 years for them to actually make the change. It occurred in 2017. Since then, we've seen the Rookwood development on the east side of 13 that has 288 dwellings proposed in it at full build-out. We obviously have Prospect Meadows that is being built and soon to open. More development is happening at Squaw Creek Crossing. We have a school that's proposed on 35th Avenue. We have a church that was built at 35th Avenue and Iowa 13, along with many other development projects. So drafting, I put the letter that we sent last time in your council packet so you can kind of see the main template, but I would use these items. I got some information from Nick Liu with Medco on Prospect Meadows, and just kind of highlight all these things that are happening, and maybe they we would ask them to lower the speed limit as that development is occurring. But we need a motion from council directing us to do so.
Okay. So that will be the action on Thursday's motion directing you to prepare the letter and send it.
Yep.
Okay. Good.
So it'll
Questions
be-
on that? It's good that you're putting out that request because we know it takes them a while to respond to those types of things, so.
So are they the ones to decide what the speed limit would be, or can we make a suggestion or recommendation or request?
So last time what happened was we just asked them to look at it, and they actually came back to us and said, do you have a recommendation? And we did have a recommendation for them. It is joint jurisdiction, but they have to set the speed limit. So we can say we want it 35, and they're going to say no. So it's still a primary.
The ultimate decision is theirs.
Yes.
Okay.
But when they do the proposal, if they do a proposal to lower it, it will come back to you guys, and you guys will see it, and basically you have to either say, yeah, we agree with that, or no, leave it how it is.
So we can reject their
If you want to, yeah. It is joint
final
jurisdiction.
decision? Wow.
Yeah, I mean, now if it's in Lynn County, obviously that's not our jurisdiction, but
Yeah.
you
As
need
long
to
as
have some
it's in the city
transitions in
limits.
there.
Okay. All right, number 6.
So number 6 and 7 are related. This was brought up about a month ago. So 6 is our policy regarding the applications for over width, over depth on pavement. It's for larger storm sewer, it's for larger sanitary sewer, any of those items per resolution or ordinance that we already have on the books. So this isn't looking to see how much we should or shouldn't. It's using the existing policies and making it easier so that we can budget for those items. So this is the actual policy establishing that. Then number 7 is the reimbursement policy of what they have to submit then to get their reimbursement check. So like at the last council meeting, we had a reimbursement for $500,000. And so how they, instead of just dropping a pile of receipts on Darren Andreessen's desk, they actually have a form they have to fill out with that supporting documentation.
That would make sense.
Makes it a little easier for all, and I'm sure the auditors will like that better as well.
Sure. Makes sense. Okay. Any questions on those 2 items? All right, thank you, Mike.
Yep.
Community development. Items 1 and 2, nothing is starred. Anyone have a question on those? Otherwise, we'd move to number 3.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and Council.
Okay.
We're going to talk a little bit about our housing division right now. We're going to be asking for a public hearing for the 18th of April. We are proposing an increase in fees, and we're also proposing a little bit of a change in our program. You can see that in our rental inspections, as of in March, we have 4,452 housing units right now. So, and that's just growing. We were estimating what was going to be coming up in the next year. We're probably looking at another 100 to 150 plus, maybe in 2 years, as many as 300 or more. So it's just a program that keeps growing and growing.
And that's rental units?
Pardon me?
That's just the rental units, right?
It's just rental units,
Yep.
yes. Yeah, it's not our house, not our permit building inspection stuff. This is just our housing division of it. So a little brief history of how we got to where we're at today. 2007, the housing inspections moved from the fire department to the building department. I wasn't around at the time, but I can only assume that it was because of the building department's expertise on some of the items. Fire department expertise is fighting fires, and ours is the building of houses and electrical safety and things like that. Right now we do inspections every 3 years, and it's done by a building department employee. In 2018, we hired a building inspector to fill the housing inspector position, and we've all talked about, or I'm sure you've heard about, the fact that we were going to, at the time, we were just going to hire a building inspector, and then we were going to come back with the fees and then hire a housing inspector. And I pleaded the law about letting us go ahead and get the housing inspector going, and then once we get our fees going, then we'll work on getting the other building inspector. So it's worked out fairly well so far. In 2019, we're just going to try and update our fees and our programs. So where we're at right now. Why does Marion have a program? Let's start a little bit about the mission of the building department. The mission of the Marion Building Department is adopted is to ensure a safe, secure, stable built environment through the uniform and fair enforcement of building and related codes. It's our goal to help Marion be the safest city. It's one of the things that our department takes a lot of pride in making sure that our buildings are safe, not just our new buildings, but the existing buildings as well, the ones that are rented out. So how does the housing program contribute to that goal? Well, it's all about public safety, it really is. I mean, police department, fire department, they're obviously doing public safety, but our building department does, and our housing department does public safety as well. The housing program is designed for safety of the citizens to give the residents of Marion a safe place to rent. So we want the people that rent the properties to feel that they're safe in those properties that they're renting. We do this through fire inspections, electrical systems and smoke detection, and making sure that they have fire extinguishers available, this kind of thing. We also look at health hazards. It could be a plumbing health hazard. It could be a leak in a roof or in a window that's causing mold. We try and mitigate a lot of those issues. And then we have general things that we look for when we're doing our housing inspections is for dilapidated structures, like steps and missing handrails and guardrails, things that could be a trip hazard. One of the other things we really look at is make sure that people are safe in their buildings and in their rental properties. So what we're doing is we're going to propose that the housing program to be 100% revenue funded, unless the council says no, we're not going to be able to do that. You want to do some of it out of the general fund, that's your prerogative. You have to tell us, otherwise we're going to shoot for the 100%. So this includes salaries for our housing inspector. Now these include benefits. So our housing inspector is about $83,000 a year. Our clerical staff time, they spend about half of one person's about half of their time working on the rental properties, the billing and the setting up the inspections and mailing out letters and all that. Their wages with benefits is around $35,000. And then the expenses for like vehicles, tools, office supplies, those kind of things, we just kind of estimated about $4,000 for those. So the revenue we'd like to try and generate is somewhere in the neighborhood of $115,000 to $125,000 a year. That should pay for all those expenses. Right now, our current program fees is we get $50 for a regular inspection, $13 for each unit after the first. So if we have a fourplex, we're doing the $39 plus the $50. $50 for a failed inspection, $50 for investigation fees. So that would be like if somebody is renting a unit and it's not registered, we have to investigate that and make sure that it's a valid thing, and then we'll charge them for that. $50 for each complaint inspection, and $50 for appeals fee if they want to do that. Our current revenue year to date from July 1st is $35,000, and that is just on these things here. So it's one of the things that we really need to bump that revenue up to try and cover the cost of the inspector in the housing program. So what we're going to kind of propose, and I'll get more in depth to this at the public hearing, but right now we're going to propose a $40 a year landlord fee. Right now Cedar Rapids is at $50, and actually Hiawatha is also at $50 a year. Adding a registration fee per housing unit, so it's $40 a building, and $10 for each unit after the first, so like a 4-unit complex would just be $80. Then our regular inspection fees is $75 for the building. So if you have just a single family, we're looking at $75. If you have multiple units, we charge the $10 over 4 units. And the reason we do over 4 units is our housing inspector can do a 4-unit complex about the same amount of time it takes them to do a single-family dwelling. So that's the only reason we went with that. And then if everything passes the first time, we waive that $75. We don't waive the $10 unit charge because it takes us so much longer when we get into those other ones. We have some units that, a lot of them that are 33 units, and we have some all the way up to 101 units, and we have a bunch of fourplexes, and it's just, there's a lot of them out there. The initial reinspection fee is $75, and then it goes up from there. This is what we're proposing: $100 for the second, $150 for the third, and $300 for the fourth and subsequent. So we're trying to convince the landlords that they need to get this done the first time, and sometimes the dollar amount is the only thing that gets that through to them. So, like I said, we're going to bring forth more in-depth fees and program information at the next council meeting on the 16th and 18th. I would welcome any questions if anybody has any.
Questions? Yes, Mr. Jensen.
Just a real general question then. Is it the requirement of the landlords to register with the city?
Well,
how does that work?
Yeah, we have a database of all the landlords. So what we'll do is once this gets approved, or assuming it gets approved, we'll send out a letter to everybody and informing of the program. And then in June, like the licensing fee that we're going to, the landlord fee, we're going to send out an invoice on that the part of June and have it due July 1st. So hopefully that month of July we'll have all the landlords registered in the city of Marion. After that, it just gets billed as we do the inspection. So if your inspection is 3 months from now, you get billed 3 months from now. And right now we're at a 3-year rotation. We're going to go to a 2-year rotation. So we're trying to step that up a little bit.
So you have a database, but if I buy a house and I want to rent it out, how do I know what my responsibility is as a landlord?
Really, that's not any different than what we're doing right now. So if somebody buys a house and they want to rent it out, or buys a complex and wants to rent it out, they need to register that with the city. Most people, the landlords, most of them know that. If you're getting into being a new landlord, I would hope that you would do the research on the website and see what you need to do.
Okay.
Yeah, and we do have penalties put in here, so if they are caught renting without a license. But one of the things we've always been real human about is that we give, once we find this out, I mean, they could be renting for 3 months, and once we find it out, we say, okay, you've been doing this for a while, we'll give you a week to get in here and get it taken care of. So we're not saying, okay, we're going to, we caught you doing something that's not right, we're going to charge you right now. We give them time to come in and look at it and get it taken care of. So.
Okay.
I have a question. Is there a maintenance building permit?
There really isn't a maintenance building permit.
Let me tell you why I asked.
Okay.
610 10th Street. New windows for that building, just under $30,000.
Mm-hmm.
Building permit comes forth. County grabs that, increases assessed value, $25,000. That's maintenance on a 150-year-old building that isn't construction. And I think if we don't have, we need to have some kind of a permit for maintenance, because we have a lot of property that same age that a lot of times when we do brick repair, we're maintaining, we're not building.
Right.
Windows definitely are not building. I could have left the windows in there forever.
Right. The permit fees are based off a dollar valuation of what is going to raise your property tax. So if you take an old building and you put new windows in it, we're assuming that that's going to raise your property value of your property. The assessor, looks at it however they look at it. I guess I'm not sure how they do that. But our building permit fee is based off of what we feel that'll raise the value of the property. So if the new windows, if the permit fee costs, if the windows cost you, $3,000, our
Your
permit
Honor?
fee is based off that.
I hate to completely interrupt you in the middle of this, Gary, but this is a completely different type of permit question than what's contemplated by the housing program. And so I think if that is going to be a topic of conversation, it needs to be a separate agenda item, because we're talking about building permits versus the landlord permits. And so I'm not sure if those would fall under the same agenda topic.
Even if we're not taking any action or deliberating, he's asking a question and just getting it answered.
I mean,
we should look into that, I think.
Okay. I mean,
Well, and I can tell you that we'll be looking at our permit fees probably this next fall, so I'd be happy to sit down with you, Paul, and we can talk about it.
I'd be pleased to sit down, because there are a number of historic properties that
absolutely
shouldn't be penalized for maintaining them.
Sure.
Okay. Ms. Goodale has a question.
Yeah. Hey, Gary. Couple quick things. On 1A, it has the fee of $100 will be accessed if a landlord is found to be renting, letting, or leasing. Just my 2 cents, but I would jack it up to $500 like you have at number 2 to really be a deterrent if you're trying to raise money. And then the second thing is we had a presentation by the Marion Police Department last year sometime regarding a police officer came and talked about the safe, I don't know exactly what it was called, like safe communities.
Crime-free housing.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So do we offer any incentives, or could we, as a part of this program, discount it if we do that? Because I know we were told that there was a pretty good reception for local landlords, but I think we could even try to scoop some more in if there was a way to
Yeah, we could look at that. The one thing that we are using the crime-free housing for is when these landlords, if they have a lot of violations and they don't take care of them, we will take and cite them and remove their landlord license. And we'll get a little into that next week or 2 weeks, but part of that is the fact that to get that back, they have to take an accredited landlord class, and the crime-free housing and the Cedar Rapids CR Safe both account for that. And then what we do is that whatever the fee that costs to register for that, we'll credit that back to what we're going to charge them to get their license back. But I don't know. I mean, we could look at it, I guess, and see if there's a way we could give them an incentive.
Yeah, just a suggestion, but I think that we all loved what that program does, for the community, and so if there was a way to, defray some of these to just encourage more participation, but I also realize you're trying to generate some revenue for those positions, so it's a balance. But.
And I honestly believe if they take the landlord, the crime-free housing class, which is coming up here in a couple weeks, they would actually take that, they would learn a lot. And I think some of them do that, but I think more of them need to do that.
Especially the ones that really need it, we really need them to go. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, all right, thanks.
So, any other questions?
Other questions? Thank you, Gary.
Thanks.
Moving on to page 5 of the agenda. Any items under number 2? Okay, then the last item there is F2, and I'm going to turn over the gavel to Deputy Mayor Pro Tem on this one.
Yes.
Okay? Thank you.
Yep.
So I guess at the last city council meeting, I was not in attendance, but there were some questions on in relation to a portion of property adjacent to 2791 associated with the multi-tenant commercial building and the value of that property. And I'm between now and the meeting, I had a chance to talk with the developers and just kind of let them know the concerns. I think the council at that time did, but there was some conversation and dialogue, and I think they wanted an opportunity to just kind of present the council with some information on the property before we move it further with the project as a whole. Ideally, we'd like to get to the action where we start figuring out how we move the project along. So I asked them to present that information from their perspective.
Sure, that'd be great. Please come up and state your name and address for the record.
Adam Gibbs, I'm a Cedar Rapids resident. So I brought copies, although if someone wants to show me how to use this, I can put the site plan up on the... Okay, so...
Excuse me one moment, Adam. Do we need his address as well, Rachel, for the record?
I
Yep.
Cedar Rapids address? 4211 Oak Leaf Court Northeast,
Thank you.
Cedar Rapids. So we had asked our engineer to put together an exhibit highlighting what is what's currently city property, and we'll call it a remnant piece here as it sits in with the building we're working on bringing forth to council through the development department here. So there's essentially 4 different lots that would be assembled together to comprise the entire project. There's a lot going on, so it's kind of hard to visualize, but there's the east half of the site is a property that we currently own. And then there's 2 properties that sit north of the highlighted parcel that are owned by Genesis Equities, a portion of which was the north portion used to be part of Marion Iron. The southern portion of their property was like the north half of the former railroad right-of-way. And then the highlighted portion is this remnant piece that was part of the former railroad right-of-way, but I think was created because the 27th Street alignment wasn't known years ago when all those items were taking place. So what's evolved here over time is the 27th Street alignment. The preferred alignment is that it would turn south, creating this parcel. It's about 0.17 acres. It's not final platted yet, but that's the anticipated size. And the majority of it is encumbered by easements, trail easements, utility easements, public access easement. You can see where it would connect 27th Street all the way through the development over to 31st Street. So essentially there's not much utility or use for the property, but it does, I think, clean up the site so there's not a remnant piece. And what our proposal, our request is essentially there's about 1,000 square feet of usable area in the parcel for us. 5, 6, 7 parking stalls is really what we can use as our utility for the site. The railroad right-of-way, the other portion to the east, was appraised at $1.14 a foot. And I'm not sure if that appraisal is 2016 or 2017. But that was the basis for the value for the other portions there. So what our request is to pay $1,140, which is basically the per foot appraised value times the approximate usable area of the lot.
Why are you basing it on a 2016 figure?
I think it's the most recent one that's out there.
It is, wow. Okay.
Well, that would be the appraisal. Like, so when the city owned it, we hired an appraisal to be done before we sold it as a part of that package. So to get the appraisal updated would be probably between $1,000 and $2,000. So we were kind of like, let's just. So that's why we're just using that for a basis of value. So even if it, if you just said that, well, it increased by 30%, you're still not going to get that appraisal cost into it because
would exceed that.
Yeah. So that was kind of the baseline conversation that we started with.
And so wasn't there talk about there being some swap for road improvement costs for the land or something like that? Or am I tangling this up with something else? And you weren't here, so I don't know if someone on council can help me. But I thought when we raised this and when it came up at the recent meeting, the issue was, we were talking about having a more formal sale of this because we wanted to make sure that there was equity or it was even for the city. And I'm not disputing that. What are we going to do with that piece? I think we wanted a record that the city wasn't losing on this. I think that's the headline. Do you remember?
Well, there was some discussion brought up talking about 27th Street and that we didn't know what the alignment was going to be on that, and that the cost of putting 27th Street should be 100% of the city. And I think that statement at the meeting 2 weeks ago was done, if I recall, based upon the fact that the city has precedent and has paid for the rest of all the roads around the roundabout. So I think that part City Council was, fairly acceptable of. I think the one part was coming back to this and not just giving the land away, that this is really, your group, GLD, should be the logical owner of this piece of land. The city really doesn't want it.
Right.
But I think as being fiduciaries of the city's land, we want to make sure we're doing it in a fair and reasonable manner that should be done. So I think that was the gist of the two pieces that were discussed 2 weeks ago.
That sounds familiar. So what you're offering is to square that up?
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions?
Well, his comment, his offer is to pay the $1.14 for only the usable amount of your land, because you're talking about, if I'm looking at this, so this is talking about, this is the entire piece in salmon color that we're talking about
Yes, correct.
selling. So you're taking, the bottom part of that includes some parking
Yeah.
Parking spots?
So going from like south to north, if you will,
Yeah.
there's the trail easement, then there's
Right.
a setback, there's parking stalls, then there's a public access easement, and then north, which is really the driveway end, and then north of that driveway where it's kind of the concave piece, there it would encompass a few portions of parking stalls.
So you're going to put parking stalls on, right in the middle of that salmon-colored piece.
Mm-hmm.
And so where's your 1,000 square feet start at, Adam?
Yeah, essentially it would be the 5 or 6 parking stalls that sit south of the driveway, between the driveway and the trail.
Okay.
Then there's one, basically a full parking stall to the north, and then portions of parking stalls, if you will.
On the other piece, on the curved piece?
Correct.
All right.
What's the total square footage of the whole salmon piece?
Well, it's not platted yet, or it's not a plat of survey. It's anticipated to be 0.17 acres, which is about 7,500 square feet.
You're talking about 1,400 from roughly 7,500?
I'm talking about 1,000 square feet that's usable of the 7,500 total. So what's unique too is you've got a trail easement that runs, there's some grade challenges plus the trail easement that sits to the south that does encompass a lot of the property, which is unique here.
So we would sell the entire piece to you.
Correct.
But your offer or proposal is to pay only the amount that you feel is usable by your project.
That's correct. That's our rationale behind it.
That's your rationale.
That's correct.
Okay, anything else?
Yeah, I assume the landscaping that is, drawn in there, that's going to be, even if it's down by the trail easement, that's all going to be what you're putting in. Correct?
Yes, correct. Now, this isn't a final landscaping plan. This
Right.
is, that'll
More
come
likely
in
there'll be
sequence
things
here.
like that there,
Yeah.
just we don't know exactly what.
At this point, this is multiple versions of really a site plan with a placeholder in for landscaping probably.
But the landscaping will be, GLD's installing it.
Yes, that's correct.
The trail itself are you installing that and then the city's reimbursing? Is that how that's working? Okay.
Yeah,
But as far as the landscaping around that whole area is all going to be GLD?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
Okay. Yeah, they'll own all that land.
Right.
Yeah.
Just so everybody's clear on, so the portion, there's 2 easements. There's the trail easement on the south, I think 30 feet, 35 feet. And then there's parking spaces that would be on private property, not unencumbered. And then the drive aisle would be encumbered by a public access easement. Not uncommon in development when you have a public access easement. That's to ensure that if a fire truck needed to get from here to the backside of all the properties there, that would happen. So that's not necessarily uncommon in a development. Walmart, the road around, that's a public access easement. So that's, they own it, they plat it, they did the improvements. It's necessary for public access. So those 3 things are there. That south easement for the trail, though, we retain that access. They're installing the improvements to that, and then we're reimbursing them for it. And then we have an easement over that for maintenance. So we will maintain that area. And that's in a previous agreement that we have. So if you go out there now, you can see that the trail's graded in all the way over to 31st Street. So the size of the parcel, as indicated, it's about 7,500 square feet. If you use the appraised value of it for the entire parcel as a sale, it's about $8,500. I think what's being proposed is that the usable area for the parking would be the payment, which is the $1,000-some dollars. I just want to make sure that like all the cards were on the table, so there's no like mysterious thing hanging out there. So,
I would just make one correction.
Can you state your name? Excuse me. Can you state your name and address on the microphone for the public?
Dave Drown, 6627 Spring Grove Court Northeast, 52411. I would just make one maybe amendment to what you said. You said the appraised value was $7,500, that piece has not been appraised, correct?
No, based.
So what Tom is citing is a sales comparable that was next door that was done a while ago, but this is largely different because of those easements. So you can't really apply that same dollar per foot to this entire piece, and that's the point we're making with the 1,000 square feet or so.
So when we, as a city, sell property, do we not include square footage where there are going to be easements required? Do we cut that out of the portion we're going to charge for? Like this one?
I don't know that we've done this particular instance in this manner. Usually, because there's just not a lot of value there, usually we like to go off appraised value. That way, there's this interpretation isn't occurring.
Right.
Because then it's like an independent person that says, hey, here's the value, and it's real easy for everybody around the table to say, that's the value, and no one had a say in it. So this is kind of it's kind of a goofy little place where we're at with that.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll try to articulate why I think this piece is uniquely different than the other portion to the east, which is because the north half of what used to be a railroad right-of-way, which is really the buildable area of the railroad, is already sold. So the $1.14 a foot that the other appraisal was based on took into consideration that probably half the site was usable and half was buildable, half was unbuildable. Now this piece, this is really almost entirely just the unbuildable portion of it. So to Tom's point, from a practical standpoint, an appraisal may cost more than what I think the bottom line of the property is probably really even worth.
I agree.
So trying to use that basis as logic into, okay, what are kind of the buildable area? What is the buildable area of this southern half that's the most challenging to work with? Is the basis for this logic behind 1,000 square feet using that per square foot value.
Thank you. Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
Yes, Steve?
Yeah, my final comment is, again, I mean, you're the best owner of this piece of land. I mean, there's no question about that. Nobody's going to dispute that. But I would question your rationale about what portion of that you're really going to benefit from. I'd be fine cutting off the trail easement and saying, yeah, you're really going to get no benefit from that, although I think indirectly you will. But again, you need that access for everybody coming off 27th to get to your property. You're going to have parking spots just north of the trail. I'd be fine cutting it off there as far as, coming up with what a reasonable value is. And I certainly would not want to do this in a manner that is going to cost anybody any additional fees by an additional appraisal or anything like that. I'm fine to use some number that's already out there that can be agreed upon and not incur any more fees for either party. But I go, if I look at this layout, I go, I'd take it from the parking spots that you got right in the middle of that north and saying you're getting the benefit of that portion, not only for this project, but for the hotel. So that'd be my rationale.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Anyone else on this? Well,
I'll just say I guess I'm okay with their proposal. Yeah, they're just paying for what they're using. They're also going to develop it and landscape the whole area. And like Steve said, no one else is going to want to purchase that anyway. So.
No,
yeah, one more item that's, again, it's difficult to put a finger on because until we actually get in there and do work and understand the soil conditions, that whole property is what we found in building the hotel and other pieces that we've dug up old railroad ties and other subsurface conditions that you can go and drill a bunch of holes in, but if you don't hit everything, you don't know what you find. So with that being a public access easement, having to build it to handle the traffic that will go on it, yes, there's some value that is kind of it's part of a parking lot,
but also there's some just unique challenges that are a result of how the property was used in the past. This particular piece also, because it sits south of Marion Iron, has other debris in it that we found so far. So there's definitely some unknowns that go with it. So we want to be fair and reasonable in it, but we've got very unique challenges that will be that we'll have to deal with on the fly a little bit as we really get into developing and building on what is currently the city parcel.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, relinquishing the gavel back to the mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Can I speak to one other issue on just quickly? Sorry. As we proceed with this, what I'd like to do, if there and I don't think there was a resolve to that question.
No, I don't either.
So maybe it's not what we'd like to do is getting to the point where we're setting the date for the public hearing regarding the disposal of city-owned property. And maybe I can put 2 action items on the council agenda for Thursday, and maybe that's directing staff to proceed with the sale of city-owned property at a value of X, and then setting a date for the public hearing. Because the way that we work with the disposal of public property, we want to make sure that we can at least set the date for the hearing. Yeah. And then the next agenda we can hold that, because if we don't do that, then it's going to set kind of that project back a little bit. So just on Thursday, you'll see those 2 items, and then we can move it from there. Does that make sense? I just don't want it to lag anything.
Thank you for thinking of that, Tom.
Thank you. Sorry for the...
Okay, we're on page 6. Administrative services. Item number 2 is starred. Any questions on item number 1 before we move on to that one?
Nope.
Okay. Is that you, Lon?
Probably a tag team of Kara and I.
City attorney? Okay.
Yep. So there's a couple of things with the way that the city has to implement franchise fees, that one of the key requirements to it is what do we intend to use those fees for. And the way that you declare that is to adopt the revenue purpose statement. And so with ours, we've had conversations about what to include in the revenue purpose statement, because it does act like it's the limiting factor on what you can actually use those dollars for. One of the things that Kara discovered when she was doing her research is that if you use the phrase property tax relief, you have to have some way to be able to stipulate what those actually are and be able to demonstrate. How do you demonstrate what the property tax relief is actually going towards? So do you select a particular project that would have come out of property taxes? Do you publish one property tax rate knowing that you're going to reduce it afterwards? What I look at is what can we do administratively to actually be able to affirmatively demonstrate to the public and our auditors that we are in fact using the dollars for property tax relief. I think you can make a fairly strong case that anything that they're being used for in the general fund that can only be paid for otherwise through property taxes is in fact property tax relief. So any franchise fees receipted into the general fund are property tax relief. So for your reference, I went back and calculated based on the budget for FY20 that was just approved. The property tax rate that was adopted by the city was $14.22. If the revenue that we had programmed in for franchise fees was property taxes instead, it would have made it about $14.88. It would have put about 62 cents per thousand of additional property taxes in place to make up for that $1,024,000 or so that we had programmed in there for the franchise fees. So the question is really, do you, as a council, do you feel strongly that we need to have that number in there? Certainly, from an administrative standpoint, it's easier if we just say that we're going to use it for public safety, but I can certainly also understand the rationale for why you would include a number in there. And there are cities that have it. There are methods that they use to do it. So if council wants to see that in there, then I would say we could use that language up to a certain percentage, and then we'll have to figure out how we would administratively demonstrate that for the public.
Any questions?
Anything to add, Kara?
I would just add to that I spoke with the state auditor's office, and I attempted to speak with the Iowa Department of Revenue, who were absolutely clueless about what I was trying to ask them, even though they are directly mentioned in the statute as needing to have notice of this. And I spoke with the League of Cities attorney, and essentially what I was told was that all the auditor cares about is that we do what we say we're going to do with the money. And as far as the League of Cities, they said they don't know of any cities that have used the up to language, but they don't see any reason why that would be a problem. In particular, since the auditors don't care and the Department of Revenue appears not to care, I'm not sure who else would be upset if we used an up to amount. I did add in a provision about using any funds in there for like the administrative costs for supervising this or maintaining this. I don't know that it's required to have that in the revenue purpose statement because that is actually provided for in the statute that those costs come out of this fund first. But because we are looking at the property tax relief as a purpose, I thought it might be important to give the public notice that any additional costs of administrating or maintaining this would be paid for from that fund. Just because I think the administrative costs will be a lot higher if we have to track that. I did also find out, I think, Renee, it was your question about whether or not we can change this revenue purpose, and we absolutely can. We just have to adopt an amended revenue purpose statement, and that can be done at any time. We just have to publish it and send it on to the proper authorities.
Okay, thank you for following up.
Okay. Comments?
Yeah, my comment is we got to this statement that we're talking about as far as using it for public safety and property tax relief because the original possibilities were about this big, and we were trying to simplify it and get it down to a couple that we could all identify with and that we thought the citizens would also support and also understand. That said, I guess we didn't know we had to put a percentage in here for property tax relief when we were talking about that. So I'm not sure what we put in there, although I think we need to put something in there because there certainly may be years where if we don't put that in and we say it's just for public safety, we may not need all of it for public safety in a certain year. So I don't ever want us to be in a position where we have to force ourselves to have to spend money just to meet a statement that we put in there. So that said, I certainly am still in favor of leaving the property tax relief piece of it in there, but I'm not sure what percentage. Only that I would suggest whatever it is ought to give us quite a bit of flexibility going forward.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I agree with Steve. We were very specific in the budget meetings about what it was for, and while I understand it's going to cause additional work, this is where I think transparency is, it's our opportunity to be transparent. I think this is where we take it.
I agree. Anything? No?
I guess I saw it differently. I saw it myself as we were doing it for public safety. I didn't see it as property tax relief myself. I always thought it was public safety, but so my thought was to just word it as public safety only. I don't think there's ever going to be an issue of being able to not spend the money on public safety. So
I don't know. I will never. That's a big word.
Yeah.
Never say never.
Yeah, I would.
True. But anyway, that's my 2 cents. I guess if it's the consensus of everyone else to have the property tax relief in there, I'm not against it. I just wasn't going into this. I always thought it was public safety.
Steve's right though. If you can simplify it, that's a big item to me. So it's not so complicated.
One thing I would point out is that this does include the expanded definition of public safety. It's not just police and fire, and it is important to note that as far as that would encompass a lot more projects.
Well, it would encompass building permits. From Gary's presentation, there's an element to public safety. I mean, it's a huge umbrella.
Public safety, yeah.
Right. So.
Civil defense in the future, yeah.
How do we get to a percentage? So in other words, if we define as we have to come up with a percentage.
Yes, we have to
statement.
specify.
So I don't know how we get to that.
We have to specify at least an up to a certain percentage. And so that, honestly, that is up to council. to determine. And so that one I can't, it's not really a legal argument any which way. That's kind of up to you guys, what you want to make that percentage.
Yeah, from a de facto standpoint, because you're using franchise fees instead of property taxes to fund those positions, it is quite literally up to 100% of it is being used for property tax relief. That's just the reality of it for the way it's going to be reflected in the budget, or how it's actually, the practical impact it has on property taxes in the budget.
So is that your recommendation, Long?
It does make it administratively easier to be able to show that. It's easier for me, logically, to be able to show the impact that it has just booking up to 100% of the revenue for property tax relief. Because like I did today, I can calculate out what the property tax rate would look like if you had to levy it for taxes versus using the franchise fees instead. If you start to portion it out or go, I would just say, pick, if you don't want to do it that way, then I would just pick some logical increment, whether it's 10%, 25%. Don't pick 7.23 or something like that. That's going to introduce some additional variables in there. Just keep it something that's a little simpler to calculate.
I mean, I would go fairly high. I'd pick either 50 or 100. I'd keep it pretty high because there's, again, it gives us flexibility, and they're all coming out of the same pool.
I agree.
Safety is, so I go revenue statement purpose that I think we just need to provide, but those are the two intended purposes, and what percentage it is, I think, is as important as it is what we're saying.
Specificity, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, isn't the greatest flexibility 100%?
Absolutely. I'd be in favor of that.
That consensus? Okay.
You okay with that, Paul?
I think everyone seems to be okay with that. Everyone who's here.
Okay. Easy.
Yeah.
Okay, anything further on that one?
Not necessarily right on that one, but on the ones to follow, if you're okay with me moving into those.
Yeah, please.
Just to give a brief update, the ordinances have all been passed on to the respective utilities. I think we are pretty much there on Lynn County REC. We've got a little bit of tweaking to do on Mid-American and Alliant, but I'm incredibly hopeful that we will have those completely ironed out with the respective parties by Thursday.
Okay. Any questions on those, or anything else on this page? Nothing further is marked to be discussed on this page. Anything? Okay. Thanks, Carol.
Mayor, before you move on this one, I would just point out on number 9 that we have been in communication with Mr. Hill, and we're getting some clarity. The draft that you have did not include a lot of dates and everything in it, so we're filling in those blanks, and as we get those known, we'll send them out to council.
Okay. And that's for the relocation of the houses?
Yeah, the memorandum of agreement on number 9. Yep.
Okay. Great. Okay, next is engineering. On page 7, there are a couple items at the top of the page.
So the first one is approving a contract with HR Green regarding engineering design services for the 10th Street, 10th Avenue, Central Avenue intersection. This is the mini roundabout that we got the TSIP funding for. We're still waiting on the DOT to actually get the TSIP agreement. I emailed them, and they have some turnover that occurred at the DOT, so they say they're going to get that agreement to me here this month. But we did receive 9 proposals from different engineering firms, and they range in prices from $32,000 to $95,000. And so we look at qualification space. We don't just go with the low bid on design services. And the committee met, and their recommendation was to go with HR Green for an amount not to exceed $58,724.
Okay, any questions on that? So here we're approving a contract that Have we had an actual vote approving the project?
Well, on August.
I know we had approved applying for the grant.
Mm-hmm.
And then, have we actually approved the project?
So eventually what would happen is HR Green would design the plans, and then you guys would approve those plans and release them for bid.
Okay. We had a discussion as to whether or not this project should happen or shouldn't happen.
I think some of the last discussion we had a few months ago about this project was talking about the size of it. If I recall, Mike, is the last time we talked, this roundabout be similar to the one on 35th and 29th?
So that was the initial discussion, but during the meetings that we had with RFPs on the different consultants, we talked about making that bulb as big as we could and still classify it as a mini. So there's those comments. We've already taken those into consideration.
Yeah.
Same thing with how big are the median islands so that a stroller fits, so that's bigger than 29th and 35th. So we've looked at those things. We're not going to be able to accomplish everything, but we're going to look at that and complete as much of it as we can.
Because that's part of our discussion and comments is, can we make it bigger? And then part of your comment was the funding is all predicated on the size of the roundabout.
Right. It still has to be
and that if
classified
you go a
as
lot
mini.
larger, then that will cancel the funding out. We'd have to reapply.
Yep.
So is that
Yeah, so we
correct?
still have to have it small enough that it's still considered a mini.
Classified as a mini?
Yes.
Okay.
So it can't be a full roundabout. And I guess when we applied for the T-SIP, we told them that we were going to build that. So, I mean, I guess if you don't want to proceed with it, I need to know that so that we can tell them we don't.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying I do, I don't. I'm saying we haven't had the discussion. I'm saying when we voted to apply for the grant, the premise was that we were up against the deadline. We wanted to apply just in case we wanted to do it so that we'd have the funding. But we haven't had the discussion of whether or not to do it. I mean, I know that's probably your recommendation, and that carries a lot of weight. We just haven't had that discussion.
Well, if you want to have it, I would like to have it now then.
Okay. I mean, that's all.
Before we put more staff time into it, I guess let's have the discussion.
And that's fine, but that is really what happened. I mean, we were told we needed to apply because the deadline's coming up. And whether or not we want to do it, just so that we have that option. And that's my clear recollection, but we haven't had the actual discussion yet.
Can we at least defer the discussion for Thursday so that we have a full council? If you're talking about doing it right now, or is that?
Well, I will not be here on Thursday. I will have my, yeah.
I mean, am I incorrect or?
You know, I've had questions about how many houses we're going to lose and things of that nature that
As you can tell, there are no houses being taken down for this project.
From my standpoint, I remember discussing this and then discussing a mini over on 8th and Lindale and during, I think, our CIP discussions.
Mm-hmm.
And so
we
I
actually
thought,
had HR Green come in, so we paid for a TEEP study.
yeah, so I thought I agree we haven't had the formal, like, let's vote discussion, but I thought we were all prioritizing this over some other maybe necessary ones. So I guess in my mind, it was a consensus that we're moving in this direction, but.
Okay, and that's fine if everybody feels that way.
Well, my input would be I'm fine moving ahead on it, but I think we gave all of our input a couple months ago saying we want to make this as large as possible, but yet without, I think Paula talked about maybe would it be worthwhile to make it a large one and take out some houses, but I'm not sure we didn't go any further than that. I'd personally be fine with it, making it as large of a mini as we can. So,
is that what we've done?
Again, that's what we're hiring HR Green to do.
Oh.
Okay. Still stay within the funding.
Yeah, and if we put a giant one in there, then it kind of loses the character of the older. Like I like the idea of keeping it the max of the mini, whatever that is. Mini max, whatever.
Well,
We'll come up with a name.
You know, my feeling, I know that, you know, technically and safety-wise and engineering-wise and all that, the 29th Avenue one works, and people think it's been very successful, and it probably has. But if there's one that gets the most complaints from residents, it's that one. And they don't like using it. And, it's tight, it's small. So to the extent we can make this one a little bit better.
But some of that is on purpose to slow people down.
Yeah, I know.
You got to make it a little uncomfortable so that they do slow down.
Or just have a car that really hugs it. I'm kidding.
Some of the things we're
That's
asked,
all.
Mike, is, and just for this one, we're gonna pass $58,000. How much would new stop sign lights cost at that corner? I mean, that's the kind of questions we get, I get anyway.
Well, Ryan, anyway, if right now the signals are not working properly, and so he has hardware that he was going to have to order, and that I believe that was $30,000 to $50,000 just to change out the hardware. That's not putting up new lights. That's just changing some of the hardware so that the timing works correctly.
But if we put up brand-new lights, an alternative, I remember we had the discussion, but I don't remember what, one of the alternatives we
It was
talked about a
adding
few months
turn
ago was-
lanes and putting up new traffic signals. I'd have to go back and look at the report, but ballparking, I'd say it was $500,000.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was too, about the same cost as the roundabout. Yeah. So, which is better? Okay.
Well, the roundabout's forever, and the lights aren't, that's one argument you can use, but, you're gonna be asked about it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. Well, it sounds to me like everyone is comfortable proceeding with what's been done. I, just wanted to make sure that we had that discussion, because my recollection of the only time we really discussed whether or not to do the project was when we applied for the funds, and it was on the premise of, well, we always have the option not to do it, but we need to apply for the funds to give ourselves that option of doing it. And I just want to make sure that we're doing things, as we should. So, okay. Moving on to number 2.
So number 2, this is regarding the Burnett Road Bridge. So we're still doing the plans for the bridge, even though it has been defunded. And part of that, the Central Avenue Bridge was not built big enough at the time. So Indian Creek is actually, the picture is north-south, so this is Central Avenue that turns into existing Burnett Road number 1 to the east. And this is Indian Creek right here. So what we're doing is we're coming north of that, and we're actually installing a backwater relief, a box culvert underneath the street. And so what this will do is when we have those high water events that we had a couple weeks ago, the water will go through this and through the bridge before it overtops to help that relief when you have a lot of water. This also serves as the trail for the Indian Creek trail that starts at Donnelly Park north of the bridge that we just put in a couple years ago, and it'll take it all the way up to Tower Terrace. And so rather than going underneath Central, the trail will actually go through this box culvert, so it serves as 2 purposes. And that's kind of why we need to get it built, even though we're not building the bridge yet, is because there's not a flat spot to get that trail underneath Central Avenue, so that the trail would not be able to be built without doing this box culvert. So it serves as a dual purpose. So they're getting the plans together on this one, so there's a lot of information in your memo. This is going to be a 12 by 10 by 59 foot RCP culvert, reinforced concrete box. It's the trail underpass for the Indian Creek Trail. And the engineer's preliminary cost estimate is $589,000. The rest will be used to purchase wetland credits and to get those plans done. And then once we have the funding for Burnett Road, then we can build the actual bridge. And then sealed bids will be received April 30th of 2019 with council consideration of award on May 9th of 19. Work shall begin no later than July 8th of 2019 and be completed within 70 working days. There are liquidated damages of $1,000 per day. And when they build this, basically similar to how they did 13, other than this is a smaller scope, is they're going to do half at a time. So in this case, it'll be one-way traffic with a temporary signal on one half of it, and then they'll build half of it, and then we'll have to switch. So there is going to be some congestion while we're building this.
How long is that going on?
70 days, 70 working days. So
Oh,
it's
that's
a
not
Monday
bad.
through Friday when it's not raining.
That's not bad.
Wow, that's going to be brutal.
Look what Paul put up with.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Fair point.
What did you say the cost is? 500,000?
$500,000?
For the box culvert, yeah, it's 589,000 is their estimated.
Okay, and I assume that's a budgeted item already?
Yeah, so at Burnett Road was not completely defunded. There was still a portion of it that was left in there, and that's in your.
Oh, and that's that portion? Okay. Sounds good. Okay, any other questions on that one? And that's going to be later this year, the work?
Assuming the bids come in good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. That's it for engineering. Community development.
Right on time.
Mr. Trahorn.
Good evening.
Hello.
Did you guys get a chance to read through that big, long document in there? Good.
Most of it.
Most of it? Good deal. So on Thursday, we're going to hold a public hearing regarding the adoption of that master plan. We did hold an open house prior to the Planning Commission meeting, and then we had quite a crowd at the Planning Commission meeting, I'd say. Not nearly as big as I think a lot of the council members were here when we originally kind of talked about the plan before it was being brought forward. I think we had about 100 people at that meeting, so there weren't that many people at the Planning Commission meeting. But ultimately, what we're talking about is adopting a plan for the neighborhood Indian Creek. The area that we're talking about is no surprise. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, by the way. You guys have the document. I think you're pretty familiar with it. The original plan's been in place for 10 years, and we're just moving forward with it, updating the plan, and then rezoning the property to a planned development district that would support this development. And then in addition to that, we held up on moving the plan forward because of the school site, the 40 acres here. We held up doing any of the rezoning so we could kind of handle it all at the same time, notify the residents at the same time, and kind of do this more consistently and ensure that the school was a part of the planning process. And they have been, as you can see, they're included in the layouts included in the document, or in the overhead plan, as you can see. So on Thursday, we're going to ask RDG, Planning and Design. They're the group that did the document. Staff's been very pleased with how the document has been prepared. The ordinance language that will be included is also done very well. We've been extremely pleased with how that contract has went. And I hope you can see in the graphics that it was done very well. So they're going to do an initial presentation to the council. I think that's important for you to hear from them because they've been our partner throughout this project, and I think it's important that you hear from them. So they'll walk through it. It'll probably take a little bit of time, but I think it's worth. Councilman Jensen was at the Planning Commission meeting, so you probably hear this again. We're going to ask him to kind of squeeze it maybe a little more condensed. But I think it lays some good groundwork for those in the audience that may attend and for the council as well if you haven't been actively engaged in the project from the get-go. So as you look at the agenda, you'll notice there's quite a few public hearings, and I'm just going to walk through those. They're the ones that are highlighted on my agenda, just so you understand what they are and why we're doing them. I think the documents and stuff speak for themselves. I wasn't planning to do any presentation at the work session this evening. So the first public hearing is just on the plan. To adopt the plan, we want to hold a public hearing. So F1 is the public hearing. F2 is the adoption of the plan. F3 is the public hearing regarding the land use amendment for this area. Now, that land use amendment extends a little further out. As the council's aware, an amendment to our comprehensive plan and ultimately the future land use plan for the city is the basis for zoning. So if we adopt the plan, we need to amend our comprehensive plan so that we can adopt the zoning that would support the long-range plan. So what we do, this is our current long-range plan out to Highway 13 south of Indian Creek Way. You know, we've just updated some of that. We've added the commercial up north on the west side. We've got a more of a business park area designated out here. The gray or this, I don't know what color that is, but this color is more of a high-density residential. And you can see we've kind of increased some of the medium-density areas of the area from the single-family, which is the lighter yellow. We're seeing a big turn into more what I'd say medium-density development. So we're just kind of providing for that area. Understanding that Prospect Meadows is going to hopefully drive some economic development, we've provided for that extension of the commercial along the west side of Highway 13. We didn't really address the east side primarily because there's some sewer serviceability issues in that area. There is everywhere here, but we want to make sure that we're being realistic in that regard. So that will be the public hearing that we also have, will be an adoption of the land use plan amendment. Clearly, we're not rezoning property all the way out into this vicinity. Our city limits don't even go out to that area. So, but we will speak to the land use component. The public hearing on number 5 is the rezoning to the PDS district, which is supported by the plan. So that's the ordinance language. That's where we're talking about the mixed-use development, and those are guided by the plan document. And then item number 7, the final public hearing, is the rezoning of the property for the school site. We could have probably held those two public hearings together, but we didn't know how that conversation would go when we started down this road. And so we wanted to make sure that if we got 2 public hearings, we got 2 different ordinances. If something goes sideways on one can be approved without the other. So that's why there's 2 public hearings on those. So we just wanted to keep them separate. But ultimately, the rezoning here would go to the PDI or PI district, the public institutional district, and provide for the school site on that property. I walked through that kind of quick. I know there's a lot of public hearings. I just want to make sure there's some logic. When you read that, I know it doesn't really tell the story very well, but I'm hoping that the staff reports did that. Any questions on all of that?
Yes, ma'am. You said a lot of people came out, not as much as the first time, but was it generally positive or just people curious?
There were some folks that were curious. I think even before the meeting, I think I had a few conversations, and I don't think many folks really spoke out against the plan. Mm-hmm. There's one individual, the developer of the property to the west, that has some concerns and wants to know how the property, in particular how the parkland will be acquired. Mm-hmm. As a part of the project. And, I've had private conversations with him about that. And I'll just publicly tell you that, there's not a funding source for that. We don't have a line item that says parkland, we're going to buy it for X. But we zone our entire community. And we zone our community associated with planning documents. At the time at which we would start that conversation on acquisition would be when the property's platted and a development proposal is moving forward. We understand there are other issues that drive that conversation. Right now, sewer service out there is a little touch and go. So if someone came in to develop, that would be a question we would have. I think that area is pretty tight with it. Mike, I don't know, that north side where the park is that serviceable right offhand?
I'd have to look at what the watershed.
Yeah, we'd have to look at it. But nonetheless, there's a lot of other conversation. If someone came in tomorrow and said, I want to develop out here, there would be a long period of time before
a lot of that would come into play, and we would be having those conversations on acquisitions at that point. So we do have a line item in the CIP. It's in the unfunded needs category. There's no dollars and cents associated with that, but that's just, it's not uncommon.
Right.
I mean, it's just the way it operates. I wish I could tell him, oh yeah, we've got the land or the dollars sitting over here, we're just waiting for you to develop. That would be ideal, but that's not the case. And I don't think if you go to any city, there's really that situation that exists. So as that property develops, we will continue to review how that can be acquired. This is in an urban renewal area. This plan was paid for from the urban renewal area, if you recall. And so, that's an opportunity that may be for some funding in the future as well. So.
Go ahead. Yeah, I think two being at the meeting, and I was also at the public meetings where everybody came in and looked at the boards and all of that. I mean, that was very well attended.
Mm-hmm.
And there's quite a few people at the P&Z meeting as well, but certainly if I look at it long term, I mean, that 20-acre park piece on the north side, if I recall from the map here, we have, 3 or 4 different current owners of that parcel, of that 20 acres, so that's going to be a challenge as well as how to fund it. But the other piece I'd like to have maybe just a little bit more discussion about Thursday is all of the single-family detached housing on the north side and the east side of the school of the Linmar parcel. If I recall from the discussion at P&Z, more of those lots are designed as smaller lots, mostly basically accommodating a 2-stall garage.
Correct.
Not a 3-stall.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is my takeaway when I left that night was that was maybe one piece that I was a little bit more uneasy about, because certainly the people that I see moving in to those neighborhoods near a school are going to be younger families with kids.
Yep.
That's why they're going to be buying those houses. It's not going to be retired people buying a house near a school.
Yep.
So that said, I just see those families having more of a need, or having a real tight squeeze getting by with a 2-stall garage. I mean, there's still plenty in the city that had that. I'm just saying the norm today is, especially if you have, kids, is a 3-stall garage. So I think we need to discuss that just a little bit more on Thursday to make sure that makes sense for that that piece of it.
Yeah. And the perspective that we come at this plan regarding that is, right now, we're getting quite a bit of push to go to 50, 55. We even had a proposal for 45-foot lots. Land prices are going up.
Yeah.
Lot sizes are going down. And I think that trend's going to continue. And the concern, we just reviewed a proposal for those, I'll call them the narrow lots. And even with a 2-stall on a narrow lot, if you don't do an older, like a split foyer, all you see are the garage doors.
And I don't want that.
Yeah, and that's
None of us
so,
want that.
so there's a whole design dynamic that's a part of this. And Mr. Jen, you heard me say this at the Planning Commission, man. You can build a 3-stall everywhere else in the city. We're just saying right here.
I know.
And it's an affordability perspective. But I completely understand. I mean, I completely understand that concern. And I mentioned that at the P&Z meeting as well.
Yeah.
So that's kind of and what's interesting, and I know I stopped mid-sentence, but what's interesting with this, we went from 75-foot lots, 3-stall ranch, and almost in 6 months, that flipped to we want 50s and 55s, and it was, and almost every major developer came in and did that flip. Morris Wood did it, Skogman did it, Joe Robson did it. I mean, it was kind of so that market is moving so fast, it's very difficult for us to react to, and so anyway, that's just a part of that conversation as well.
But Rookport was designed. Did I say that right?
Rookwood.
Rookwood. Sorry, my mistake. So Rookwood was designed for a lot of that. I mean, they had the design plans already in place for the narrower lots.
Correct. Yep.
Yep.
That is terrific.
Mhm.
I think to have over there, they're going to have the neighborhoods designed for that.
Mhm.
I'm just having a more difficult time seeing it right next to the neighborhood adjoining a school. And that's, again, well, in the future, 2 schools.
Yep.
So,
No, I understand. I do.
But isn't that the whole point of this neighborhood, greater density?
Yeah.
It's a whole different concept. And do you have maybe you can by Thursday, trends and statistics on where things are going in terms of younger people are not wanting bigger houses, I don't think, and they don't want the
Thought that was me.
responsibility.
I was like, what did I do?
And they're not as possession-oriented of having things, but they want more flexibility to.
Can I add to that?
To do what they want. And
I know some statistics from NAR, National Association of Realtors.
Yeah, go ahead.
And a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, so that millennial generation isn't as interested in buying the 2-story picket fence house with a 3-stall garage, but it's my kids, our kids, that are coming up now that are going to want to go back into that style, because there was that recession that happened, and a lot of these families across the nation, they lost their homes because of the housing crisis, and they didn't get to live in that nice home with the 3-stall garage. And so that's what the younger generation that's coming up is looking for in the future, according to NAR. I agree with Tom that, yes, the developers are coming in wanting those smaller lots, but those smaller lots, I think they're gearing that towards the baby boomers that are selling off the houses with the 3-stall garage and moving into the smaller homes with a 2-stall. My parents just did it. They went to a condo, and they're probably going to have 1 car here in the next couple months. They're not going to need 2 cars anymore, so they did a smaller garage.
Right.
But to Steve's point, when you get around the schools,
right,
when the families that do want the 3-car garage, I could see it on the other side where you're more densely populated.
I'm fine with that west side.
Yeah, and other areas of town, that's fine. Well, they're not going to be. It's not going to be marketed towards the baby boomers. This is going to be marketed towards families.
Yep.
So, I totally agree with you. But yeah, if you want to find some stats too and bring them in, but there's a few that I already know just from
So will the
profession.
The presentation we're going to have, that'll include all this?
Correct.
What's the reasoning for this?
Yep.
the
Yeah,
lot
we'll
sizes
ensure that
and
there's a conversation.
proposals
I can see if they can maybe, the consultants can help kind of hit on that a little bit as well. But, I mean, that's clearly the one thing I would say is that, and maybe I'm completely wrong, but I think it's going to be a while before we see that area develop because, and I can speak to it from a sewer perspective, I do know up here, if you split that property kind of like this, Mike, help me out here, about like this, this is really not serviceable until we get sewer from the north. Is that right?
Yeah,
So some of this maybe?
The school's kind of the split point between there, and there's a ridge. So even that school district likely needs to be served from the west, and then the rest comes up from 44th.
Yeah, well, maybe more like this.
So one question I would have, Tom, is let's say we approve this. And again, I mean, from a conceptual standpoint, I think it's a great plan. I love it. But from the standpoint of by the time that does get developed, if we approve this plan today, does that lock that whole single-family area into the lot sizes that are outlined there, or can those all be
It would lock
adjusted after we start seeing what may happen in another 5 to 10 years down the road?
You'd have to amend the plan.
It would lock them into so the zoning districts would move forward and development. Now, what can happen is 2 years from now, hey, this isn't what we're thinking is going to work. We'd have to go back and amend this within the document.
We have to amend this plan.
Yeah, you'd have to amend, and we would amend the districts most likely, opposed to like the whole
plan.
Because
Tom, if you and I wanted to buy, 3 lots and split one of them, could we not do that?
well, the design standards in here are really geared to saying that you can only have a two-stall garage
So
towards
is Hunter's Ridge, but it's happened a
Yeah.
lot out there.
But that Hunter's is probably more supported by covenants, that situation that you're just talking about, than it is zoning. And the zoning on this one says you. Now, this doesn't say you can't have a tandem garage. You have a two-stall outward facing and then a double deep.
Right.
You know, or if you have, a lot of this is showing alley loaded. If you have a two-stall garage and one of them's alley loaded or an accessory
Alley
structure.
loaded?
Some of them are.
Okay, I didn't recall that.
On that side?
Which would make a difference.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally agree. Yeah.
When's the school plan to build?
I'm sorry?
When is the school, what's their agenda?
I think if they could grade tomorrow, they would.
So
So the rezoning is contingent upon the site plan. It's subject to the site plan, so that we're holding them accountable to what they're proposing. But once the zoning's in place, they're going to want to. I think they've got putting plans in and.
We have a digital copy of the building plan, 80%, not complete yet.
So,
You
so
repeat-
80% building
you
plans
repeat
are
what
in.
he said. Repeat what Gary said.
Yeah, so Gary had indicated that the plans are at 80% digitally, so we're kind of reviewing them internally now. I believe the desire is to have the schools operating for the 2020 school year.
Fall.
Yeah.
2020.
Did I say that correctly?
I think 2020, fall of 2020.
Yeah, fall of 2020. Yeah.
They get it done that fast?
So,
Yeah, 2020.
That's where we're at.
So,
Okay. Yes, Will.
So do you foresee, with the school being 2020, do you foresee developers coming in and wanting to start developing around it? I mean, are you hearing anything from developers yet?
I've heard from Development West. We may have the ability to see some of it on the property west of the school site, primarily west, is in the hands of development community. The property east is no one that's developed before that I'm aware of.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Doesn't Joe Erzman own that?
Yeah, Joe Ernson. He actually lives right here.
Yeah.
Now, that's not to say he'll sell that to a developer, and there are sewer serviceability issues in that vicinity. I'm not sure if it's all serviceable. If I'd have to look at it, but that'll be the question. That's what's going to drive this. The school site's going to go in. There's going to be a desire, and then the concern or the issue is going to be the single family on the northeast side is going to have to. We got to figure out a way to service it. And honestly, if you recall, we're doing a study to determine capacity. So
that's right.
I mean, there's a bigger conversation about that going on.
How's that coming along?
I just got an email I forwarded to police and our fire and public service. They're getting ready. They just came into town today to put the flow monitors in the sanitary sewer to get our flow.
Okay.
Mayor, may I ask?
Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to chime in on the two-car garage thing. So I just moved 5 months ago from literally Oak Ridge Middle School was in my backyard, Echo Hill, my daughter walked there as well. And, parking was beginning to become an issue. And most of some of the houses in the development were two-car. Most were three. They were newer, and there was still an issue because people move in to have the walkability to schools, and then as the kids get older, they need a car. And so I think that the issue that's raised a lot of our parking ordinance stuff lately is on the other side of Oak Ridge, 3-car garage stalls. And so that's a big concern for me, because the people who are going to want to live there are going to be the younger families, and they're going to grow into the house with the teenagers, et cetera. So if we don't address it in this plan, I do think we'll be looking possibly for a future amendment, because we'll just be creating parking issues and what side of the street and all of that mess. So when we can get ahead of it to the degree
But
that
with
we
this,
can.
it will have only parking on one side of the street.
Right. That's what I mean. So it's even, yeah. No, you're right. I'm glad that will be there from the get-go, but it would be nice to build with 3.
I would ask the council between now and Thursday, think about 2 things as it relates to this. One would be affordability, because the standard 3-car ranch is up there now. It's not that's why you see that smaller lot. I think you're going to see a return to the split foyer and to the two-story, two-stall garage, and just because of affordability, I think that's going to be something that's coming. If you look to Des Moines, the Destiny Homes concept, it's a two-story. It's kind of a return to, and I'd like you to drive through this neighborhood, and that's that old English Glen neighborhood, north of 29th Avenue, west of 35th. When I moved here about 15 years ago, that was a new development, and that is a primarily two-stall, split foyer, two-story neighborhood. But that is almost where, everything's cyclical. I'm not wearing bell bottoms, but it's just like style. Those housing and that development style is coming back, and I think it's
Thursday.
I'll wear my bell bottoms, but I would ask that you walk through that neighborhood or drive through that neighborhood and just take a look, because that's what I think. That's the density that's coming back around.
Where is that? English Glen is?
It's west of 35th, north of 29th. So.
Yeah.
I don't know why I can't think of any of the street names out there, but I can't.
Yeah, they're all the Beatles things.
Yeah,
Abby and
but
Penny
as you go
and-
further north, it transition. You can see where the transition from the two-story two-stall went to the ranch three-stall, and that's the Penny Lane and the Beatles area.
Yeah.
But if you come further towards 29th Avenue, you'll see that English Glen area, and that was Midland Homes, Regency style. So, and that's what like the whole. That's like West Des Moines and its growth area was that style of home. So anyway, something to think through. And I would just point out that, so on Thursday, the public hearings on the plan, lots of questions. If there's concerns, there's nothing driving the adoption of the plan and the rezoning of the property to the PDS. So council wants to table that, push that public hearing. There's nothing, there's no developer sitting there doing it. So I'm letting you know. However, the school, the rezoning to the PDI, and that's why it's separate. They would really like that to happen. So I just want to be clear on that. So with that, I'll sit down.
The school is a separate action item?
It is.
Yeah. Okay. Just confirming. All right. Okay. There's nothing else on page 7. So we've covered your items on page 8 also. Tom?
I'm sorry?
Have we covered your start items on page 8?
I hope so, or the staff's going to be very upset.
Yeah. Okay, that's the school item there. Okay. Okay, anything else under community development, 8 through 12? Any of those weren't starred? Okay. I think then we are through the agenda. I think under council discussion, Council Member Gadela had a comment.
Yeah, I did. Thank you. I just wanted to revisit that discussion, and I'm sorry the gentleman left about that 7,500 square feet versus the 1,400 square feet, because I just want to remind everybody, and maybe I'm alone in this, and so, oh well, but there are only a few ways as a city, as a government, that we can generate revenue, and asking our citizens is the largest way. I certainly don't want to deter economic development. I think it's important. But I also think we need to strike a compromise on these things and not just accept sometimes what's presented. Because when I think about what we heard with the, hang on, I wrote down the note, the Marion Youth Coalition, that's going to be a future, like we have items that come to us where we have to come up with money from somewhere. And so I think when we have an opportunity to leverage and maybe compromise with an entity for something that is needed on their part, they might not even get that project were it not for having those additional parking spaces. I just want everybody to be open-minded about that, because it's very easy to just accept that. But I think this is where it's good to stand our ground as a council and make sure we're looking at every opportunity to recoup or bring in revenue that can offset the $500,000 box culvert that nobody will even think about, or the Marion Youth Coalition, or the Marion Leadership and Action program that we're asked to match funds for. There's so many asks that are put upon us, and so few opportunities other than, bonding and those kinds of things. This is one of those opportunities. It's really not much money in the scheme of things, but I just wanted to use it to make the broader point. And I know we don't have the full council here, and, but for your benefit, I can't help but think that. That's it. So, thank you.
Anything else? Yes, sir.
The only thing I had, as you get older, these things happen, but Steve would remember in the last 5 months, we've lost Dr. Robert Thurnis, which would have been coaching football when you were in Marion. At his funeral was Les Dollinger, who was the athletic director. He is now gone. At the Thurnis funeral, Bob Lana, who owned the newspaper, is now gone. Whether you like Terry Bjornson or not, he is a loss to our community. And John Vernon. And those folks we need to remember and recognize because they're all important people in the history of Marion. And I'd like to just have her remember them.
Thank you. Okay. If there's nothing else, the meeting is adjourned. Oh, yes.
Weren't we doing that? Oh, that's Thursday. Never mind.
Okay. The meeting is adjourned.